You didn't just read those lines, you heard them, in his voice. Because some voices, some performances, get burned into your memory forever. Al Pacino didn't just act in movies, he lived in them. He made you believe every single word out of his mouth, every twitch, every whisper, every explosion of rage. For those of us who grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Al Pacino wasn't just our favorite actor. He was the actor, the gold standard, the reason we went to the movies. Today on Classic Star, we're telling his full story, and trust us, it's more dramatic than anything he ever filmed. Alfredo James Pacino, born on April 25, 1940 not in Hollywood, not in Beverly Hills, but in Manhattan's East Harlem, raised in the South Bronx. His parents divorced when he was just 2 years old. His mother moved them in with her parents, his grandparents, in one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City. No money, no connections, no safety. He quit school at 16 to help support his family. He worked as a messenger, an usher, a building superintendent, just to keep the lights on. But at night, he was sneaking into theaters, watching plays, memorizing every line. He went through a period of depression and poverty, sometimes having to borrow bus fare just to get to auditions. This wasn't a kid with a dream and a safety. This was a kid with nothing but talent, fighting his way up from the bottom of New York City. Sound familiar? That's because it's a story our generation understands. While other young men his age were trying to figure out their lives, Al Pacino was obsessing over acting. He began studying theater at the Herbert Berghof Studio and soon landed parts in off-Broadway productions. Then, in 1966, the big break. He made it into the prestigious Actors Studio, studying under Lee Strasberg, creator of the method approach that would become the trademark of many 1970s-era actors. Method acting. That's where you don't just play a character, you become one. You live it, you breathe it. You don't leave it at the door when the director says cut. His stage work earned him critical acclaim, notably winning a Tony Award for Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie in 1969. Broadway loved him. But Hollywood? Hollywood had no idea who he was yet. That was about to change, in the biggest way imaginable. It's 1971. Director Francis Ford Coppola is casting the most important film of the decade, The Godfather. He wants Al Pacino to play Michael Corleone, the youngest son of a mafia don who slowly transforms from an innocent war hero into the most powerful and ruthless crime boss in America. Paramount Pictures thought he was too short and too understated to play a gangster. They suggested less ethnic actors for the part. The studio said no. The executives said no. Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford, Warren Beatty, and Robert De Niro all tried out for the part. Coppola said yes, and he fought for Pacino with everything he had. Pacino was reportedly in constant fear of being fired during the very difficult shoot. Then the movie came out. The Godfather, 1972, became the highest-grossing film in history at that time. And Al Pacino, the broke kid from the Bronx who borrowed bus fare to auditions, was suddenly the most talked-about actor in America. For those of us who saw that film for the first time, you remember the moment Michael Corleone changes. That quiet, cold look in his eyes. That's not acting. That's something else entirely. The 1970s belonged to Al Pacino. And for our generation, these were the movies we watched as teenagers and young adults that made us fall in love with cinema. Instead of taking on easier projects for the big money he could now command, Pacino threw his support behind what he considered tough but important films. Serpico, 1973. A real New York City cop who blew the whistle on police corruption. Brave, raw, unforgettable. The Godfather Part 2, 1974. Somehow even better than the first. A masterpiece. Dog Day Afternoon, 1975. Based on a true story. A desperate bank robbery in Brooklyn. One of the most gripping films ever made. He was nominated 3 consecutive years for the Best Actor Academy Award, 3 years in a row. Let that sink in. And then in 1983, just when some people thought his best days were behind him, He said one of the most famous lines in movie history. Say hello to my little friend.
Okay.
Scarface.
Say hello to my little friend.
Scarface, 1983. Tony Montana. Al Pacino as a crazed drug dealer in Brian De Palma's hit, cementing his legendary status in an ultra-violent cult film that your generation has been quoting ever since. After Scarface, Pacino hit a rough patch. A bad film called Revolution in 1985 nearly derailed everything. The Revolutionary War-themed film, considered among the worst films ever made, resulted in awful reviews and kept him off the screen for the next 4 years. He went back to the stage, he regrouped, he waited, and then he came roaring back. Sea of Love, 1989. The Godfather, Part 3, 1990. Frankie and Johnny, 1991. And then the one that finally got him the gold statue he deserved, Scent of a Woman, 1992. He won the Best Actor Oscar for his portrayal of a bitter blind man, a retired army officer angry at the world, being shown life again by a young college student, the speech he gave, the tango scene. After 8 Oscar nominations, the Academy finally gave Al Pacino his due. Our generation stood up and cheered. He didn't slow down after the Oscar. He got better. Carlito's Way, 1993. Back with director Brian De Palma, a gangster trying to go straight, heartbreaking. Heat, 1995. The greatest cop vs. criminal film ever made. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, the 2 greatest actors of their generation, finally facing each other across a coffee shop table. Our generation will never forget that scene. Donnie Brasco, 1997. Playing a low-level mob guy taken in by an FBI agent. Understated, brilliant. The Devil's Advocate, 1997. Playing the devil himself opposite Keanu Reeves. Completely unhinged in the best possible way. By the end of the 1990s, Al Pacino had given our generation more unforgettable moments than almost any actor who ever lived. Here's what you might not know about Al Pacino off-screen. He has never been married, but he has 4 children. And here's the one that made headlines. At age 83, he became a father again with producer Noor Al-Fallah, making him one of the oldest fathers on record. He achieved sobriety in 1977, something he rarely talked about publicly for decades. And here's a story that shocked everyone. Pacino revealed in his memoir that he once had $50 million in savings before it vanished. He described 16 cars, 23 cell phones he never knew about, and a landscaper who pocketed $400,000 a year for a property he didn't even live in. His accountant had been running a Ponzi scheme. The man who played the most powerful gangster in movie history got robbed blind by his own accountant. That determination rebuilt his fortune to $40 million by 2025. Because Al Pacino never stopped working, never stopped showing up. At an age when most people are fully retired, Al Pacino is still at it. He co-starred with Robert De Niro in The Irishman 2019. His first film with Martin Scorsese, playing labor leader Jimmy Hoffa, earning his 10th Oscar nomination. In October 2024, Pacino released his best-selling memoir titled Sonny Boy, covering his life from a challenging childhood in the South Bronx to becoming an iconic actor. He appeared in 5 independent films in 2025, including a horror film called The Ritual. At 86 years old, he is still working, still acting, still that kid from the Bronx who refused to quit. When you've lived 50 or 60 years, you've seen enough to know real greatness when you see it. Al Pacino gave our generation Michael Corleone, Tony Montana, Frank Serpico, Sonny, Frank Slade. Characters so real, so fully human, that we still quote them, still think about them, still feel them. He came from nothing. He fought for everything. He lost it all and rebuilt it. And at 86, he's still the most interesting man in any room he walks into. That's not just a Hollywood story. That's the American story. Al Pacino, South Bronx, Broadway, The Godfather, Scarface, Scent of a Woman, and still going strong at 86. What's your favorite Al Pacino movie or moment? Drop it in the comments right now. I want to know. Is it the coffee shop scene in Heat, the baptism scene in The Godfather, or something else? If this video brought back some great memories, hit that like button, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
If I were the man I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place.